In the headlines, Tinubu presents a 58.47 trillion naira 2026 budget proposal to the National Assembly. Defense gets 5.41 trillion naira. INEC meets PDP factions ahead of FCT Ekiti Osun elections. Driving license shortcuts raise safety concerns. On the foreign scene, South Africa unbowed after U.S. threatens consequences over refugee center raid. A warm welcome to News Update on Trust TV. I am Neemana Bagudu. Now, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has presented a 54.46 trillion naira 2026 appropriation bill to a joint session of the National Assembly. The president disclosed that non-debt recurrent expenditure stands at 15.25 trillion naira, while capital expenditure is pegged at 26.08 trillion naira. According to Tinubu, the budget is benchmarked on a crude oil price of $64.85 per barrel, daily oil production of 1.84 million barrels, and an exchange rate of 1,400 naira to $1. In sectoral allocations, defense and security received the highest allocation of 5.41 trillion naira, followed by infrastructure with 3.56 trillion naira. Education was allocated 3.52 trillion naira, while the health sector received 2.48 trillion naira. The president said the proposal tagged Budget of Unconsolidation, Renewed Reliance and Shared Prosperity is aimed at sustaining economic reforms, strengthening national security and improving the welfare of Nigerians.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished members, our 2025 budget implementation faced the reality of a transition and competing execution demands. As of the third quarter, 18.6 trillion naira in revenue, representing 61% of our target. That's poor. And 24.66 trillion naira in expenditure, representing 60% of our target. Following the extension of the 2024 capital budget execution, the December 2025, a total of 2.23 trillion naira was released for implementation of the 2024 project as of June 2025. While physical challenges persisted, the government met its key obligations. All key obligations are met. However, only 3.10 trillion naira, about 17% of 2025 capital budget, was released as of the third quarter, reflecting the emphasis on completing priority projects. All the 2024 capital projects during the transition period.
Now, the Federal Executive Council met on Friday to approve the 2026 appropriation, after which it will be presented before a joint sitting of the National Assembly. The discussions on the budget were the only item lined up in a meeting that started at noon. Kehinde Amadu reports.
The aggregate expenditure for 2026 is projected at 58.47 trillion naira. 6% higher than the 2025 budget estimate. This includes projected spending by government-owned enterprises amounting to 4.98 trillion naira and 1.37 trillion naira for grants and donor-funded projects. The projected aggregate spending also includes statutory transfers at 4.1 trillion naira, debt servicing at 15.52 trillion naira, including 3.388 billion naira for the sinking funds to settle local contractors and creditors.
So good afternoon, gentlemen of the press. Welcome to this press briefing after the just concluded meeting of the Federal Executive Council. Let me say that this is a one-item FEC meeting. It is to consider and pass the 2026 budget for transmission, for onward transmission to the National Assembly later today by Mr. President. The budget has been looked at and discussed by members of the Federal Executive Council after its due presentation by the Honorable Minister of Budget and the Director General of the Budget Office.
Other details in the budget include downward review of the projected exchange rate from 1,512 to 1,400 naira against the dollar, which would require changes to the budget size. Personnel cost is expected to include pensions at 10.75 trillion naira, which includes 1.02 trillion naira for budget-owned enterprises, which is 7% higher than provided for in the 2025 overhead cost. Capital expenditure is also expected to fall from 25.68 trillion naira to 22.2 trillion naira, which is 1.8% lower than what was projected as capital expenditure in the 2025 budget. This, according to the designers of the budget, reflects a more conservative approach to capital planning and a focus on completing ongoing projects.
This afternoon, the Federal Executive Council considered the 2026 budget proposal that is going to the National Assembly, as well as an amendment to the medium-term expenditure framework, which we propose a revision downwards of the exchange rate from the 1,512 to 1,400, and the consequential changes in budget size. So the Federal Executive Council approved both the amendment to the MTEP as well as the 2026 budget proposal for presentation to the National Assembly. Thank you.
These cabinet members would want Nigerians to believe that the 2026 budget reflects a deliberate balance between macroeconomic stabilization and development imperatives. An interesting point to note is that the budget estimates on oil price, exchange rate, and dividends from government-owned enterprises are conservative and not overly optimistic. From State House, Abuja, Kehinde Amodu, Trust TV News.
In another story, strong backlash dominated the Senate Committees on Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters public hearing on Legal Practitioners Act and Terrorism Act. The committee had recommended death penalty for the kidnapping, but justice bodies warned it won't stop the crime. The session reviewed amendments to the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act to cover kidnapping offences, but the Attorney General of the Federation, the Nigerian Bar Association and the National Human Rights Commission and others rejected it outright. The cited evidence and Nigeria's track record saying capital punishment fails as a deterrent. Instead, it risks overloading the justice system and ignoring root causes of violent crime.
You are liberty as lawyers to, in the open, defend a murderer, and you go home and sleep. I, as a senator, when somebody from my constituency is killed by a kidnapper or set of kidnappers, and they see the person walking freely, or he goes to court, and the court asks him to go and spend 5 years, 10 years in prison, meanwhile their loved ones have been killed. Our people do not understand that as justice. The law of society must reflect the values of the aggregate views of community, not of the learned minds, not of the senators. Today, I still stand I have been harassed, not only me, every senator here, each time. People from our communities across the country are kidnapped, and in the process, some are killed. Women have been raped, and after rape, they are killed. Children have been orphaned. So, for those who talk of human rights, who's right?
In the case of America that you have mentioned, it is not a state matter, it is a federal matter. If you ask for mutual legal assistance, it's not a state of Illinois or Maryland that will do it. It's from Washington. So the standard is by Washington, not any of the 50 states in America. And the position is clear. We have to be very wary of winning something and losing the battle. We have to be very, very practical. We need to fight it. That is one. Number two, you may honestly be swaying sentiment in favor of suspects. The way some of the judicial, I'm not a judge, but the way some of them think at times, and they are human beings, is along the line of, oh, I have a choice between losing this man or convicting him. Oh, if I convict him, I've been mandated to sentence him into death. They rather leave him. We have to be very practical. We're all involved. We're all concerned. We're all paid. But softly, softly. Thank you very much.
I'm Mr. Chairman, but I want to remind you that in whatever way.
Now, troops of the 8th Division Garrison of the Nigerian Army, Sokoto, have neutralized 5 armed bandits and recovered weapons and motorcycles during coordinated security operations in parts of Sokoto and Zamfara states. A credible military source confirmed on Friday that the well-coordinated offensive commenced on Wednesday, targeting identified bandits' hideouts across several communities. The operation covered Gangara, Makawana, Satiru, Baichi and Kurkusu villages in Isa local government area of Sokoto state, while troops also advanced into Batamna village in Shinkafi local government area of Zamfara state, where they encountered stiff resistance from the criminals. The source recalled that troops of the 8th Division had earlier neutralized notorious bandit kingpins operating in Sabo, Barini and Isa local government areas of Sokoto state. Meanwhile, the special advisor to the Sokoto State Governor on security matters, Colonel Ahmed Usman, retired, alongside other residents, has commended the Nigerian Army and other security agencies for the sustained successes recorded in the fight against banditry in the state. Now, at least 9 persons have been abducted by gunmen in Inele Ugu Iga Ikeje community of Olamaboro local government area of Kogi State. Among the victims are 4 mourners, a woman and her 3 children, who were reportedly on their way to attend a burial ceremony in a neighboring community when they were intercepted by the attackers. The incident occurred in the early hours of Friday when over 40 armed men stormed the community. The gunmen reportedly overpowered the victims and hurried them into the forest. Now, 5 other residents were also abducted separately on their farms during the raid. Eyewitnesses said the large number of gunmen and the sophisticated weapons they carried forced local vigilante members to withdraw as they were unable to confront the attackers. A distress call was immediately sent to troops of the 12th Brigade of the Nigerian Army stationed at a nearby checkpoint. However, residents said the soldiers arrived after the gunmen had already escaped into the forest. Although troops and local vigilantes are currently combing the surrounding forest in search of the victims, community members insist that ground operations alone may not be sufficient. They're calling on authorities to deploy drones and police helicopters from Lokoja to enhance surveillance and aid rescue efforts. Efforts to obtain official confirmation from the Kogi State Police Command were unsuccessful, as calls to the command spokesperson were not returned at the time of filing this report. Now, suspected cattle rustlers have stolen 50 cows in Bugu, a rural community in the Lafiaji area of Kogi State. Security sources said the incident occurred at about 4 p.m. on Thursday when two young Fulani herders, Hassan and Husseini, both aged 25, were grazing their cattle on the outskirts of the village. The herders were reportedly ambushed by armed men who emerged from nearby bushes and forcefully drove away the animals before fleeing the scene. The incident was formally reported to security agencies by Abubakar Mohammed and Malam Tijani Ahmed, the secretary of the Miyetti Allah Cattle Breeders Association in Lafiaji. Now, following the report, security agencies launched an immediate response. A joint task force comprising personnel of the Nigerian Army, the Nigerian Police Force, members of the Village Guard Network, and local hunters had been deployed to the area to track down the perpetrators. The security official involved in the operation said the team has begun a coordinated search of nearby forests, bush paths, and known cattle routes commonly used by rustlers. Now, the Independent National Electoral Commission on Friday intervened in the leadership crisis rocking the People's Democratic Party, summoning the party's rival factions to its headquarters in Abuja. The meeting brought together the faction led by Tanimu Turaki and the group headed by Abdurrahman Mohammed, which is backed by the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike. Turaki attended the meeting alongside members of his National Working Committee, Secretariat staff, and former Niger State Governor Babangida Aliyu, while Mohammed was accompanied by members of his National Caretaker Committee, including its Secretary, Senator Sam Anyawu. And speaking at the opening of the meeting, the INEC chairman, Professor Joash Amupitan, said
we have decided
became necessary following a series of conflicting correspondence received from the party. He noted that the intervention was also informed by preparations for the Federal Capital Territory Area Council elections scheduled for February 21, 2026, as well as the governorship polls in Ekiti and Osun states slated for June and July 2026, respectively. The INEC chairman stressed that the Commission's actions were guided strictly by the Constitution, the Electoral Act, and its internal regulations, assuring the factions of its neutrality.
We have decided to invite all the parties, especially the fact that we have received conflicting correspondences from the People's Democratic Party. And we felt that this rubbing minds together will be a good opportunity for us to forge the way forward concerning the elections. And I'm happy that this morning we have very top officials that are present here so that we can discuss as a family and see how the issues can be resolved and we'll move forward. We are guided by the provisions of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the Electoral Acts, and the regulations that have been made by INEC pursuant to the provisions of the Constitution, as well as the provisions of the Electoral Act 2022.
This is News Update on Trust TV, coming up after the break. Driving license shortcuts raise safety concerns. More news when we return. Do stay with us. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is the News Update on Trust TV. Let's take a look at our top stories once again. Tinubu presents 58.47 trillion naira 2026 budget proposal to the National Assembly. Defense gets 5.41 trillion naira. And INEC meets PDP factions ahead of FCT, Ekiti, Osun elections. Now moving on to more stories. Driving schools are everywhere in Nigeria's cities, yet road crashes remain high. This gap is raising fresh questions about how drivers are trained, how licenses are issued, and how closely regulators enforce the rules. Trust TV's Noel Sampson reports.
From Lagos to Abuja, Port Harcourt to Onitsha, driving school signboards line major roads, yet formal driver training is increasingly treated as optional. Investigations show that many motorists obtain driver's licenses without attending accredited driving schools, bypassing required procedures through shortcuts and collusion involving officials of the Federal Road Safety Corps and vehicle inspection officers. Before the creation of the FRSC, driving schools worked closely with state road traffic units to provide structured training and testing before licenses were issued. That framework had weakened. Today, enforcement gaps allowed untrained drivers on the roads. The impact is visible. FRSA figures show Nigeria records over 9,000 road crashes each year, with more than 80% linked to human error, including poor driving skills and lack of training. At the same time, rapid urban growth and vehicles import have pushed Nigeria's registered vehicle population beyond 12 million, increasing pressure on already strained road safety systems. Joseph Adejo, Chief Instructor at Joy International Driving School in Abuja, says proper training remains central to road safety, but compliance is poor.
Either you go through driving school, VIU, the VIU will take you to driving school. To register with social driving school. That's why we have standard driving schools. So driving school, now whether you are in Gwagwalada, if your driving school is standard, people will look for you. Driving school is not like you just park your car under a tree and you say you want to do a driving school. You must have office. You must have simulator, both manual and automatic, and you must have standard manual and automatic cars so that you can use it to train your students. The fault is not from the driving school. It's not from the fault is not from the driving school of FRSC or VIU. You know, human being behaviors are different. Some drivers are above the law. Instead of maintain that 100 for express, they speed more than 100. But driving school will tell you that the maximum speed for car on expressway is 100. Anything more than 100 is overspeed. And you know overspeed kill.
Regulatory agencies insist driving schools are still a mandatory part of the licensing process. However, road safety analysts say the problem is systematic, weak oversight by the FRSC, comprised inspections by VIOs, and poor enforcement of certificate requirements.
I am yet to get to a place where I will apportion blame. And I don't think I will apportion blame to anybody. I would rather say the question you are asking now is a societal issue. Road safety is doing their part. The ROTS, which is representing the FCT administration, the states are doing their own part. The part they are doing is ensuring that all the driving schools are well equipped. All the driving schools meet certain standards. And when they meet all the standards and people are not coming to them, you will not blame them. When you come with the certificate, it doesn't end there. Our own duty is to test you.
As traffic volumes rise nationwide, experts warn that restoring the authority of accredited driving schools and tightening license controls may be the key to reducing crashes and saving lives. Until accountability cuts across all agencies, a pressing question remains: are Nigerians drivers properly trained or simply licensed? Well, Samson, Trust TV News, Abuja.
And now in business, Nigeria's trade with other economic community of West African states, ECOWAS countries, rose by 43% year-on-year to 6.9 trillion naira in the first 9 months of 2025, up from 4.82 trillion naira in the same period in 2024. Analysis of data from the Foreign Trade in Goods Statistics report recently released by the National Bureau of Statistics showed that the growth was driven largely by a 37.6% year-on-year increase in exports, which rose to 6.14 trillion naira in 9M25 from 4.46 trillion naira in 9M24. Imports also surged sharply, rising 113.15% year-on-year to 770.46 billion naira in 9M25 from 361.46 billion naira in 9M24. Quarter-on-quarter trends revealed that Nigeria's trade with ECOWAS jumped 82.6% in quarter 2 in the year 2025 to 2.32 trillion naira from 1.27 trillion naira in quarter 1 in 2025. In quarter 3 in 2025, trade further rose by 43% QOQ to 3.32 trillion naira. Now, away from Nigeria, the South African government has rejected allegations by the United States that it harassed and intimidated American officials during a recent raid on a center processing refugee applications by white South Africans seeking asylum in the U.S. The raid carried out on Tuesday led to the deportation of 7 Kenyan nationals for allegedly working illegally in South Africa. Now, following the operation, the U.S. accused South African authorities of publishing the passport details of American officials involved, describing the action as unacceptable and warning of possible severe consequences. South Africa has firmly denied the allegation, insisting it treats data protection and security with the utmost seriousness. The incident comes amid heightened tensions over the U.S. decision to offer asylum to members of South Africa's Afrikaner community, whom Washington claims are facing persecution. The South African government has repeatedly rejected the claim. Now, under President Donald Trump's administration, the U.S. has drastically reduced its annual refugee intake from 125,000 to 7,500, but says Afrikaners, largely descendants of Dutch and French settlers, will be prioritized. Now, that's the much we can take on news update right here on Trust TV. Do well to follow us on all of our social media platforms and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more news. Join us at 9 p.m. on News Hour for more news. I am Mimuna Bagudu. Thanks for watching.